Father Abraham, 7 sons. 7 sons had Father Abraham, and he never laughed, and he never cried. All he did was go like this, to the left, to the right, to the other left, to the other right. Father Abraham. Today I want to talk to you about one of my go-to training principles, which is being relaxed while you work out. So I took this principle from a famous Bruce Lee quote. He talks about being like water, but one of the things I had trouble with was taking that quote and applying it to what I was doing. Here's the quote, by the way.
I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
And again, he talks about being like water, and you understand that as like being malleable, being flexible, being able to adapt to whatever circumstances you're putting yourself in. And I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that. And Bruce Lee is obviously a very credible person, but I was just having trouble like connecting the dots in regards to like, how am I supposed to be like water? Okay, I'm filled with blood, that's a liquid, blah, blah, blah. But I did find a good comparison during running training and getting some coaching for running. And one of the ways you find your casual running pace without a heart rate monitor or like some gear to track what zone you're in, you just speak. You speak in coherent sentences while you run, and if you're able to maintain that, then you are at a casual enough pace. And the principle to this is like, over time, you're able to hold a new baseline in your running speed while also speaking in those coherent sentences. Because you'll notice if you try this out, if you run too fast, you start to breathe really heavy and you can't maintain those sentences. But if you slow down a bit, you can start speaking clearly and you don't run out of breath. And that's where this principle kind of came from. And so I started applying this to my workouts and my pull-ups and calisthenics and all this stuff I was doing at home. And it really did push my boundaries, because just like the running pace would slowly improve, my brain would catch up to whatever intensity I was at. So like as the intensity increased, I increased the casualness or the ability to control how I was feeling during those stressful circumstances. And it was just through talking, or singing along. Because one of the weird things is if you go to the gym and you're trying to practice this principle, then you're going to be talking to yourself, and it's going to be a little weird. And that's, we always say don't let other people affect you or what you're doing, or don't let other people judge you. But to some extent, we all do that, and some people have a higher tolerance than others. But if you're not able to do that in a gym setting, I suggest practicing this like if you're doing like a small core workout on the ground. Just try to make it casual while intense. Combining these two things is kind of like taking what Bruce Lee said about being like water and just being able to adapt. And I think water in a neutral sense, right? It's a liquid. And so you're just flowing with it. If you get too hot, it turns into steam. If you get too cold, it turns into ice. So you want that flowing liquid. And I think that's what I got out of it. Maybe somebody else, you want to be a block of ice. You want to be hard as a rock, whatever the case is. But this is just my training principle, and this is what I took from his quote. And but I really did. I started applying that to, let's say I was doing pull-ups, right? And so as I was getting to 20 reps, which was the Marine Corps maximum at the time, I would talk to myself. And I could already do 20 pull-ups. So in my case, let's say 40 pull-ups, right? Because 40 pull-ups is kind of redlining for me, which means I'm getting to like max effort. But I would still keep that principle the same if I was maxing out at 20, and 20 was my max. So as I got to like 38 and 39, I would continue to just be like, oh, relax, it's okay, we're gonna be fine, it's not a big deal, and then I'm gonna be, because as you get to those last few reps, it's near impossible to really hold those coherent sentences. But what I noticed is, let's say my max was 40 at the time, at 38 and 39, if I was still able to stay casual, my brain wasn't freaking out, my body wasn't like overheating, I was able to maintain that casualness, I know I keep saying casualness, but it really is just trying to, like, don't reach for the crazy maximum intensity without chasing it with casualness, because you'll plateau really hard. And so when I got to that 40th rep and I was still able to talk, I could squeak out like 2 more reps. Obviously my breath and everything, I was like maxing out, but I went from 40 to 42. And then the next time I did it, I went from 42-ish to maybe 43. And that's just an example of what I went through. And then once I got really good at pull-ups, I started doing like these horizontal pull-ups and then practicing talking with it. If you've seen some of my videos on Instagram, I strictly make it a point to try to talk while doing these strenuous exercises. Father Abraham. Because it's not only a fun coaching method, because it shows you, okay, he can be casual in this sense and relax, and it just doesn't look hard to me. It is hard. It's difficult. But I am trying to train my body to be casual in the very intense exercise that I'm doing. And the other thing that pairs with this is, I know we've all done it. If you've ever worked out before, you've all made these like faces where we're like struggling and we're convincing ourselves it's struggling and whatnot. And I think, at least in my coaching and what I've taught Marine students and my friends and people that I train with, I always tell them, dude, don't make a face, or at least try not to. Like, just try to keep your face neutral. Like, you can call it stoicism. You can call it whatever you want. But just keep a straight face instead of, like, grimacing. And the reason I say that is because there's a psychological aspect to that as well. So, like, our body, if it expects something is going to be painful, like, if I put my hand, like, if there's a hot stove and I'm going to put my hand on it, my body is going to touch that stove and be like, that's really hot. So the next time, I'm going to be very hesitant to do that, put my hand on a stove, right? Because my body is now has a reaction to it. And I think that the psychological aspect of putting your hand on a stove compared to intense exercise and making faces, if we're making faces because it's painful, we're telling our brain this exercise is painful, this is what we need to expect, then the next time you go do the exercise, it's going to be just as hard, if not harder, because now we are expecting it to be painful. We're expecting to endure this intensity, and our brain is now prepping for that. So we get excited muscles, we might be over gripping, and it's not casual anymore. It's just really intense. And it's okay to be intense, but all I want you to try to do is chase the intensity with casualness. And an easy way to do that is by speaking during your exercises. Speaking in a casual sense, not like grimacing as best you can. Just try to do those coherent sentences. And I know running is more of an endurance exercise, so we get winded, but I've used this principle in my own training, and it really does help with the psychological or the mental aspect to it, because it does calm you down and it allows you to break past plateaus. And it's like, it's kind of, if you think about the reverse too, if something is really easy, it's almost going to feel easier the next time you do it, because your body expects it to be easy. If you're making the workout intense and hard, and you know it and you expect it to be hard, there's a good aspect to building the resilience to doing that exercise, but there's also, like, you want to be chasing it with this casual approach and being like water, and whatever you take from Bruce Lee's quote. But that's what I took from it. I took from Bruce Lee saying, be like water, as to be casual, be adaptive, be smooth with it, and apply that to your training. And that's what I've done. And I think it applies to all aspects, not just weightlifting. Weightlifting's just, where you're grimacing and stuff and trying really hard. I try to apply it as well as with rock climbing. And it comes with a little bit of exposure too. Let's go back to that hot stove reference where you put your hand on a hot stove. Now we have exposure to that hot stove, and we know kind of what to expect if we did it again. Obviously that's perfect. In a perfect circumstance, it'd be the same result every time, but nothing's ever perfect. So if you go to a rock climbing gym, or you're getting into rock climbing, or you're trying a new sport, you get more and more casual as you do it. Like now, if I get on now that I'm a V10-ish climber, I get on a V6 and I'm super casual with it, and it feels, because I have this expectation that it's going to be easy, and it is easy for me. And I think that's how we break plateaus, is the expectation of seeing that grade, that V10. And it's really difficult to apply this as you get more intense because I think it has diminishing returns. So it's like, your first leap might be from here to here, and then your next leap will be like a little shorter, a little shorter, a little shorter. But it is incremental changes over time from that exposure training, from that calmness approach. I think it can really break through plateaus. It'll take time, but applying this sort of method to your training will really help and really benefit you. Gosh, I couldn't say that. But yeah, I was just saying for rock climbing, if I look at a V10, because I'm a V10 climber or V9 even, which is just a grading scale for climbing, and it's, double digits is something I've got to before, and then I get injured. Anyway, when I look at a V10, I automatically have this brain wall that says that's going to be very difficult. And what I'm trying to do is now, again, with the diminishing returns, is apply that principle where I'm laughing, I'm having a good time, I'm talking to myself, I'm like, this is easy, this is, just having a good time with it. And there will be ups and downs. Obviously, I get frustrated just like everybody else if I try to climb something and I'm getting really close and I just can't do this one move or whatever the case is, or I'm just not strong enough to do it. But you push past that, and it's okay to hit the reset button, go back down a grade or go back down a little bit in weight, and then start there, practice the casualness, start speaking again, and then bring yourself back up to that level. So when you're ready to go, you're breathing properly, you're not over gripping, you're not overusing your muscles, and everything just becomes casual. And I think this is a really solid foundation principle that you can use in your training, and it's something that I've used for a very long time, and I hope it works for you as well. Let me know what you think. That's all I got. Thanks.